On a narrow city street, two men are walking next to a building. A third man on the sidewalk tries to warn them, but it's too late. High above, a poorly secured pallet of heavy bags, likely at a construction site, slips from its position. The entire load plummets to the ground, landing directly on top of the two pedestrians and burying them instantly. All overhead work, especially lifting operations, requires the area below to be completely cordoned off to prevent anyone from entering the drop zone. Inside a brightly lit beauty salon, clients are receiving treatments while an employee works at a shelf. The calm is shattered in an instant as a large truck, having lost control on the street outside, smashes through the glass storefront. The vehicle plows deep into the salon, sending debris flying and narrowly missing the terrified occupants who scramble for safety. This shocking incident is a reminder that even indoor spaces can be vulnerable to external traffic hazards, especially those located at street level. In a cluttered workshop, a man works near a large machine with an exposed, rapidly rotating flywheel. He's wearing a loose, untucked shirt, a critical mistake around this type of equipment. As he moves past the machine, the back of his shirt is snagged by the flywheel. He is instantly whipped around with incredible violence, spinning in the air as the machine wraps his clothing tighter and tighter around the axle. His co-workers rush in a panic to shut off the power, but the momentum continues to spin him violently. This is a textbook example of why loose clothing is forbidden around rotating machinery. It can be grabbed in an instant, leading to horrific injuries or death. All flywheels and drive shafts must be properly guarded. This onboard footage from a city bus captures the driver navigating through traffic. A passenger stands near the front, talking on the phone. Without warning, a vehicle from the oncoming lane swerves directly into the bus's path, resulting in a devastating head-on collision. The impact is catastrophic, shattering the windshield and sending the passenger flying violently forward. The aftermath shows the complete destruction of the bus's front end. This is a brutal reminder of the immense forces involved in high-speed collisions and the importance of defensive driving and constant vigilance on the road. At a construction site, several workers are standing on top of a newly constructed, unbraced masonry wall. A powerful gust of wind suddenly hits the tall, unstable structure. The wall acts like a sail, and it cannot withstand the lateral force. The entire section collapses, sending the workers plummeting several stories to the ground below amidst a cascade of bricks and scaffolding. This is a tragic failure in construction sequencing. Tall, thin walls must be properly braced against lateral forces like wind until the full structure is completed and can provide support. Two men are attempting to move a large, top-heavy commercial refrigerator or vending machine. They are using an improper method, trying to slide and pivot it by hand without proper equipment like a dolly or pallet jack. As they maneuver the appliance, its high center of gravity causes it to become unstable. It begins to tip over, and one of the men is unable to get out of the way. The incredibly heavy machine falls directly on top of him, crushing him against the floor. Moving heavy and tall objects requires careful planning and the use of appropriate mechanical aids to prevent them from tipping over. During nighttime road construction, a worker in a high-visibility vest walks near a large wheeled excavator. The operator begins to swing the machine's cab to reposition it. The worker is standing in the excavator's massive blind spot. As the cab rotates, the heavy counterweight swings around and pins the unsuspecting man against a stack of concrete barriers, crushing him. Swing radius accidents are a common and deadly hazard. Ground personnel must never enter the swing radius of an excavator without first getting confirmation from the operator that they have been seen. Inside a workshop, Two men are performing maintenance on a large industrial machine. They are positioned directly underneath a heavy, suspended component of the apparatus. It appears the component was either improperly supported or the lifting mechanism failed. Suddenly, the entire assembly gives way and collapses downwards, crushing both workers beneath its immense weight. This is a fatal violation of a primary safety rule. Never work under a suspended load. Heavy components must be physically secured with certified blocks or safety stands before any personnel are allowed to work underneath them. In a chaotic street intersection, a pedestrian begins to cross the road. At the same time, a wheeled excavator makes a turn, its operator's view obstructed. The operator does not see the pedestrian, and the front of the heavy machine strikes her, knocking her to the ground. Continuing its turn, the operator, still unaware of the collision, drives directly over her. Heavy equipment operating in public spaces poses an immense risk. Operators must use extreme caution and have a clear line of sight, while pedestrians should never assume a driver has seen them. On a freshly paved road, a group of workers is standing near the curb as a large road grader passes by. Suddenly, one of the grader's massive tires explodes with tremendous force, sending a shockwave and debris flying. The workers are knocked off their feet by the blast. This highlights the hidden dangers of high-pressure tires on heavy machinery. A catastrophic tire failure can be as violent as a bomb. The lesson is the critical importance of regular tire inspection and maintenance to prevent overpressurization or damage that could lead to a deadly blowout. In a narrow alleyway next to a construction site, pedestrians and workers move about. High above, a large blue panel is improperly secured to the scaffolding. Without warning, the panel detaches and plummets to the ground, narrowly missing several people before striking a worker. This incident is a stark reminder of the dangers of unsecured overhead materials. All items at height must be securely fastened, and exclusion zones should be established below to prevent anyone from entering a potential drop zone. At a high-rise construction site, a crane is lifting a load. A worker on the ground, standing directly under the operation, gets his clothing snagged by the rigging as the load ascends. He is hoisted dozens of feet into the air before losing his grip and falling. This tragic event underscores multiple safety failures. Workers should never be positioned under a suspended load, and proper rigging procedures must ensure no loose equipment or clothing can become entangled. Furthermore, this demonstrates the absolute necessity for fall protection equipment when working at height. At a loading dock, two men are attempting to close the rear doors of a large shipping container. As they struggle with the latches, the truck, which is not properly secured, begins to roll backward. One man fails to get out of the way in time and is horrifically crushed between the trailer and the dock. This fatal incident was entirely preventable. The number one rule when working with trailers is to always secure the vehicle with wheel chocks before any loading or unloading activities begin, to prevent any unintended movement. In a large metal fabrication facility, a group of workers is elevated in a makeshift man basket attached to the forks of a forklift. As the operator maneuvers the unstable setup, the forklift loses its balance and tips over, sending the workers crashing to the ground. This demonstrates a severe misuse of equipment. Forklifts are designed for lifting materials, not people. Only purpose-built aerial work platforms, or man lifts, which provide a stable and secure base, should be used for elevating personnel, ensuring proper training and adherence to weight limits. A forklift operator is unloading a tall, unstable pallet of bottled drinks from the back of a truck. As he backs away, the load begins to tip. The driver makes the fatal mistake of jumping from his cab to try and manually steady the falling pallet. But he is instantly overwhelmed by the weight and crushed beneath it. This is a tragic lesson in instinct versus training. The correct procedure is to let the load fall. No product is worth a human life. Always prioritize personal safety and stay clear of shifting or falling materials. In a stone or woodworking shop, a worker is standing near a series of large, heavy slabs that are stored vertically without proper support. When he attempts to move one, it triggers a domino effect, causing the entire stack to topple over onto him. The immense weight leaves him with no chance of escape. This incident shows a critical failure in material storage. Heavy, unstable items like slabs must be stored in specifically designed A-frame racks that prevent them from tipping and ensure they can be handled safely one at a time. In a busy shipping port at night, a straddle carrier is positioning a container next to a tall stack. The operator misjudges the distance and collides with the stack, destabilizing it completely. A cascade of containers topples over, crashing down onto a nearby yard truck and its driver. This highlights the need for extreme precision and situational awareness in container yards. Operators must manage their speed and maintain safe clearance distances at all times to prevent catastrophic chain reactions. During an unloading operation, a worker stands on a flatbed truck next to a massive, unsecured pipe. As workers on the ground begin to move it, the pipe suddenly rolls off the side of the truck, crushing the man standing in its path. This is a classic line-of-fire accident. When handling heavy, cylindrical objects, workers must never position themselves on the downhill side. Loads must be chocked and secured until a controlled offloading process, guided by machinery, can be initiated safely. Inside a factory, a worker stands directly beneath a large metal sheet being moved by an overhead crane with a clamp-style lift. The clamps suddenly fail, and the heavy sheet drops directly onto the worker. The lesson here is absolute. Never, under any circumstances, stand or work under a suspended load. All lifting operations require a cleared area below, and workers should use taglines from a safe distance to guide the load, eliminating the risk of being in the drop zone. At a residential construction site, a mini excavator is digging a deep trench right alongside the foundation of a concrete wall. Several workers are in the immediate vicinity. The excavation undermines the wall's support, causing it to suddenly collapse into the trench, burying one worker and sending others scrambling. This is a critical failure in excavation safety. Never dig in a way that compromises the structural integrity of nearby buildings or walls. Proper shoring, sloping, and professional assessment are required before beginning any such work. Inside a vast recycling facility, a person is walking through an area with huge piles of plastic waste. An approaching front-end loader, tasked with moving the material, has a significant blind spot. The operator does not see the person and proceeds to push them with a full bucket, burying them under a mountain of refuse. This highlights the critical need for strict separation of pedestrian traffic and heavy machinery in industrial environments. High visibility vests and clear, designated walkways are essential to prevent such tragic accidents. In an incredibly dangerous act, a worker is lowered into a deep, narrow trench while standing in the bucket of an excavator. As he reaches the bottom, the unstable, unshored walls of the trench give way, burying him instantly. This scene shows two fatal errors. First, machinery buckets should never be used to transport personnel. Second, any trench of this depth requires proper shoring or benching to prevent a collapse. This was a completely preventable tragedy caused by ignoring fundamental safety rules. In a factory, A worker enters the safety-fenced area of an automated production line to make an adjustment. Without warning, the robotic stacking machine activates, moving along its track and crushing the worker against a stationary part of the line. This is a deadly failure of lockout-tagout procedures. Before any worker enters a machine's operational space, the equipment must be completely de-energized, locked, and tagged to ensure it cannot be started accidentally. A man is operating a tracked post-hole drilling rig in a grassy field next to a property line. As he drills, the auger strikes a high-pressure underground gas line. A massive explosion of dirt and gas erupts, violently throwing the machine and operator backward. This dangerous event underscores the universal rule: call before you dig. Always have underground utilities professionally marked before any excavation or drilling to prevent life-threatening encounters with gas, electric, or water lines. On a snow-covered street, a front-end loader is clearing snow near parked cars. A pedestrian, walking on the street due to the snow-covered sidewalk, moves into the loader's path. The operator, likely dealing with blind spots, makes a turn and strikes the person, knocking them down. This illustrates the heightened risks in adverse weather. Operators of heavy machinery must exercise extreme caution, while pedestrians should make themselves visible and avoid the operational area of such equipment. In a warehouse, a worker stands in a marked walkway, completely absorbed by his phone. Meanwhile, a tugger train approaches from behind. The driver initiates a turn, causing the trailing carts to swing wide and collide with the distracted worker, knocking him to the ground. This incident is a lesson in mutual responsibility and situational awareness. Pedestrians must always be aware of their surroundings, especially around mobile equipment, and operators must ensure their path is clear before turning. Inside a factory, 2 workers are performing maintenance within a robotic cell, apparently having bypassed the safety gates. One worker leans over a component just as the large robotic arm activates unexpectedly. The arm swings around and crushes the man's head and upper body against a fixed part of the machinery. This is a horrific example of why bypassing safety interlocks is forbidden. Proper lockout-tagout procedures are the only way to safely service robotic equipment, guaranteeing all energy sources are isolated before entry.
City Street. A passenger exits a parked car and steps directly into the path of oncoming traffic without looking. A moving car strikes him at speed. This tragic event serves as a basic but vital reminder.
At a car wash, a woman is cleaning her vehicle, which is parked on an inclined ramp without wheel chocks. The car suddenly begins to roll backward. The woman attempts to stop it, but is tragically caught and crushed between the moving vehicle and a wall. This incident underscores the absolute necessity of securing a vehicle on any incline. Always engage the parking brake and use wheel chocks to prevent unintended movement, especially when working around the vehicle. On a highway, a tanker truck begins emitting a thick cloud of orange smoke, signaling a dangerous chemical reaction. The driver pulls over, exits the cab, and climbs directly on top of the tanker to inspect the leak, exposing himself to the toxic fumes. Suddenly, the pressure builds, and a massive plume of gas erupts. When dealing with hazardous materials, the primary rule is to evacuate and establish a safe perimeter. Never approach a leaking or reacting chemical tanker. Immediately contact emergency services. What appears to be a dye works or processing facility, men are working around large ground-level vats filled with steaming, boiling liquid. The work area is wet, cluttered, and lacks any protective railings around the open vats. One worker brings a bucket to the edge of one vat. He pours the contents into the vat, triggering an immediate and violent eruption. A huge cloud of steam or a splash of boiling liquid erupts, knocking him off his feet and directly into the scalding contents. His co-workers react in a panic, rushing to his aid and desperately trying to pull him from the vat. This tragedy highlights multiple failures. First, the violent reaction suggests a dangerous chemical mix or adding a liquid to a much hotter one, causing it to flash boil. Second, the complete lack of guardrails around open vats of hazardous liquid is a critical safety violation. Inside another paper mill, a worker stands on a bench next to a machine with large rollers, attempting to manually feed a sheet of starter paper into the mechanism. This forces him to place his hands extremely close to the dangerous in-running nip point. As he guides the paper, his hand is caught by the rollers. The machine, designed to pull with immense force, relentlessly drags his arm and then his entire body into the spinning drums. A co-worker on an upper level sees the accident and frantically runs to an emergency stop button, but the damage is already done. Manually feeding material into live rollers is an exceptionally high-risk activity. This process should be automated or performed using specialized tools that keep the operator's hands far away from the nip points. On a narrow city street, two men are walking next to a building. A third man on the sidewalk tries to warn them, but it's too late. High above, a poorly secured pallet of heavy bags, likely at a construction site, slips from its position. The entire load plummets to the ground, landing directly on top of the two pedestrians and burying them instantly. All overhead work, especially lifting operations, requires the area below to be completely cordoned off to prevent anyone from entering the drop zone. Inside a brightly lit beauty salon, clients are receiving treatments while an employee works at a shelf. The calm is shattered in an instant as a large truck, having lost control on the street outside, smashes through the glass storefront. The vehicle plows deep into the salon, sending debris flying and narrowly missing the terrified occupants who scramble for safety. This shocking incident is a reminder that even indoor spaces can be vulnerable to external traffic hazards, especially those located at street level. In a cluttered workshop, a man works near a large machine with an exposed, rapidly rotating flywheel. He's wearing a loose, untucked shirt, a critical mistake around this type of equipment. As he moves past the machine, the back of his shirt is snagged by the flywheel. He is instantly whipped around with incredible violence, spinning in the air as the machine wraps his clothing tighter and tighter around the axle. His co-workers rush in a panic to shut off the power, but the momentum continues to spin him violently. This is a textbook example of why loose clothing is forbidden around rotating machinery. It can be grabbed in an instant, leading to horrific injuries or death. All flywheels and drive shafts must be properly guarded. This onboard footage from a city bus captures the driver navigating through traffic. A passenger stands near the front, talking on the phone. Without warning, a vehicle from the oncoming lane swerves directly into the bus's path, resulting in a devastating head-on collision. The impact is catastrophic, shattering the windshield and sending the passenger flying violently forward. The aftermath shows the complete destruction of the bus's front end. This is a brutal reminder of the immense forces involved in high-speed collisions and the importance of defensive driving and constant vigilance on the road. Inside a mobile MRI trailer, a technician is in the control room while an elderly patient using a metal walker is brought into the scanning room. As the patient gets close to the MRI machine, its powerful magnetic field suddenly activates, violently pulling the walker and the patient with it into the machine. This is a terrifying illustration of a fundamental MRI safety rule. No metallic objects are allowed near the machine while it is operational. Strict screening protocols are mandatory to prevent such a dangerous event. At a tire repair shop, a group of mechanics is gathered around a large truck tire that is being inflated. Without warning, the tire fails and explodes with devastating force. The blast wave throws the men violently in all directions. This type of catastrophic failure is a known risk with high-pressure tires. To prevent injury, such tires must always be inflated inside a reinforced safety cage, which is designed to contain the explosive force. An industrial worker performs hot work near large storage tanks. The sparks suddenly ignite flammable vapors in the area, causing a massive explosion. This highlights the critical need for hot work permits, which require testing the atmosphere for flammable gases and clearing the area of combustibles before starting. A brightly decorated truck becomes stuck while attempting to cross a set of railway tracks. Several people on the ground notice the impending danger as a train approaches at high speed. Despite their frantic attempts to signal, there is not enough time for the train to stop. The locomotive collides with the truck, obliterating it in an instant. This tragic incident is a stark reminder to never stop a vehicle on a railway crossing for any reason.